In the summer of 1914, just before the war, the Tsar and Tsarina thought they might have found a royal match for Olga in Prince Carol, the heir to the Romanian throne. But their eldest daughter would take some convincing. Olga was really rather horrified that Carol of Romania had been suggested as a prospective bridegroom, because he had quite a reputation as a ladies' man. He wasn't really ideal material so far as Olga was concerned, and she was actually quite definite that she wasn't having anything to do with it. Furthermore, she could not accept the idea that she would have to live outside Russia. In June 1914, the Romanov family paid a visit their Romanian counterparts. This was intended to be an opportunity for the dubious Carol to win over the reluctant Olga. As the families posed for an official photograph, Olga sat at the far right-hand side of frame, kept her distance from Carol at the back, and paid far more attention to the baby on her knee than to him. And just in case he hadn't got the message, she and her sisters had concocted a cunning plan to ward off any remaining advances. Before going across to Romania, they had all spent time lying in the sun and were quite sunburned. This was something that the Romanians noticed immediately with horror. Royal princesses were not supposed to have a sunburn and look like gypsies. This way, the Romanov girls were triumphant, because this was a deliberate conspiracy on their part, so that none of them would be found attractive by Prince Carol, and none of them would have to marry him and leave home. The Romanov sisters might not have thought there was much urgency for any of them to find a husband. However, within a few weeks of their return to Russia, any thought of marriage or of leaving Russia would become a distant dream. On July 19, 1914, Germany declared war on Russia. To deal with the enormous scale of casualties, thousands of European women from all walks of life volunteered as Red Cross nurses. The Tsarina with her two eldest daughters, Olga and Tatiana, joined their ranks. Their service as nurses was not a matter of just donning an apron and mopping a fevered brow, or just holding hands by the bedside. This was real nursing. It involved seeing people with horrible mutilations and wounds. Within a couple of weeks, the girls were observing amputations, and it was throwing them in the deep end. It was the first time the girls had seen real human suffering. In May 1915, a wounded Georgian officer, Dmitry Shagbagov, was admitted to the hospital. He was a sweet and bashful character, and Olga and he were soon smitten with each other. But love had scarcely had the chance to blossom when disaster struck. Dmitry recovered and was sent back to the front. It was kind of an irony that he had to get seriously wounded again for Olga to see him later in the year. When Dmitry was brought back, quite badly wounded the second time, Olga's world lit up again, and she was immensely happy. She found every possible excuse to be at the hospital. Olga filled her diary with references to her beloved Mitya.
August 13th, cleaned the instruments with Mitya the darling sitting next to me. August 29th, went to Vespers. Mitya the darling also came. Such absolute joy. Thank you, God. October 7th, sat for a long time with Mitya.
Nevertheless, her position meant that there was no hope this passionate affair could ever be consummated. If her wish could be granted, she would have married and lived quietly in the country. She would have wanted to marry a man, just like Mitya, an ordinary man, rather than a prince. It's rather sad that the one thing Olga really wanted to do was hardly likely to happen. She was an imperial Grand Duchess, and she was going to have to make a grand marriage. Olga's thwarted romance only exacerbated the bouts of depression she suffered during the war, which was so severe that she was treated with a period cure rule of arsenic injections. Dmitry finally left the hospital at the beginning of 1916. Olga never saw him again. But to the very end of her life, she carried a flame for him. She was clutching at straws for every shred of news about Mitya, and towards the end of the year, it was surreal to meet his mother. She said,
"Oh, it's wonderful. I have a little piece of him. I've met his mother."
As late as the beginning of 1917, in one of her last diary entries, she's recording his birthday. He did find a very special place in her heart. Finally, on the morning of the 17th of July 1918, Olga, along with the rest of her family, was shot at point-blank range and then bayoneted to death. After the murder, their bodies were dumped into a mineshaft in nearby woods and eradicated with sulfuric acid. When she died, Olga was 22 years old.
Based strictly on primary sources, the book The Romanov Royal Martyrs offers previously unpublished texts in English from various archival sources. An impressive 512-page book featuring more than 200 black and white photographs and a 56-page full-color photo insert.